It's Wednesday night somewhere, maybe in Europe, but it's Wednesday afternoon live with Brian Neubert and Alan Karpick. We're thankful for you joining us. Lots of questions on Purdue basketball coming up. We hope you will chat them as well. And I've got some voice in my ears, but we're ready to roll. Hang on one second. And, hang on a minute. A little technical issue here to start.
This is going very well.
Yes, it is. And I don't know what I'm hearing in the background. Brian, we're gonna reboot and do this again. So hang on just a minute. You hear me all right now, Brian?
I hear you fine. Yeah.
I'm just hearing two of you every time I turn. So yeah. All right. It's weird. Hold on. Okay, I think we're better off than we were. Sorry about that, folks on the line. Still getting a duplication of stuff here. Brian, you're hearing me okay? So we'll go ahead and fire give us a little bit of what you think you're going to see when Indiana comes calling on Friday night. You know, it's going to be an interesting challenge for Purdue. Indiana may be better away from home than they are in Assembly Hall. But what do you think you're going to see?
Well, I think we'll see a cleaner operation from Purdue than we're seeing from this live broadcast right now. No, I just think Purdue has lost its one home game for the year. If it was ever going to lose one of those, Purdue's better than Indiana, as has been the case for a few years now. It doesn't mean Indiana hasn't been able to have some success against Purdue. Doesn't mean they can't have success against Purdue Friday night. I'd just be very surprised if Indiana is able to take this down to the final few minutes. I think, Indiana's in a tough spot here where the wheels haven't quite fallen off yet, but
right.
They're starting to rattle around a little bit. And when you look at their schedule coming up, coupled with the ever-present tension down there over what's going to happen with their coaches, it seems like every year the fan base is out on their coach, and that starts to create kind of a toxic environment down there. And when you have a bunch of players on your team who committed to a number versus committing to a school, I think it's always an interesting dynamic to see how that team responds to difficult times. And these are difficult times. On top of that, Indiana will be playing in one of the most difficult places to play in college basketball, in a souped-up environment against a team that's playing very, very well. What Purdue has done defensively in terms of its progress into a really good defensive team, a team that's winning with defense on top of having a very good offense, as has been the case for many years now, just really kind of puts all the arrows pointing in Purdue's favor here.
Yeah, you look at the game and it does make you nervous because of the variability of, if you're a Purdue fan, of where Indiana has been. I mean, obviously they were good enough to go to Ohio State and win. They have lost at Northwestern. They've been beaten badly in certain games, but the talent is there to cause some problems, I guess. And I know that we don't have a Hood Schifino maybe on IU's roster coming in as we saw 2 years ago, different situation. I get that, but Indiana has enough talent to cause produce some trouble. No question about that. Do you subscribe to that theory?
Yeah, probably their headliner guy is Umar Ballo.
Yeah,
who's obviously a big, strong, physical, athletic guy, and a lot of people can struggle with big, strong, athletic guys. You take up a lot of space like him, especially in pick and roll. Purdue saw him at Arizona last year. Fletcher Lawyer in particular shredded their drop coverage with Umar Ballo as the centerpiece of that. Braden Smith is perfectly designed to do that himself now this year. So the size at the rim with Trey Kaufman-Renn and Caleb Furst going up against that could be problematic at times.
Yeah.
But what you saw Purdue do against Michigan was what people have been trying to do against Purdue for years, and that's weaponized size against the team with the size. And I think that could be a trade-off there with Ballo and Malik Renaud. They're playing atypically big, as a lot of teams seem to be trending back toward Michigan. Just played 2 7-footers. You saw what happened in Michigan. So Purdue is well accustomed here now, all of a sudden, to playing against 2 traditional big guys. And I don't think that's going to be a huge issue for Purdue. But you never know. You don't want to pick up too many fouls. You don't want to get kind of worked over in the paint. Purdue's got a really good system going here defensively for doubling the post. But when you're doubling off of one good player up front onto another, then that's one good player up front who's not being guarded. So that's a little bit of the catch-22 with any help-based defensive system. But I just think that Purdue is playing really well at both ends of the floor right now, and I think they're due for a big three-point shooting game. I know that they made some shots against Michigan, but I think they're due for a sustained run of really good three-point shooting. And if Purdue gets that, the place will explode, and everything can snowball real quick on Indiana.
All right, you can chat us your questions. Ted Berkey, who's been on the show many times, has this team reached its ceiling, or is there more that Purdue can do to grow this year? I know you've written pretty extensively about this, that this team is it seems, I don't want to answer for you, but there's room to move in this group, in your view.
Well, the 2 freshmen are getting better. The 3 freshmen are getting better. Riley Bird just played really well against Michigan. I think he's getting better, but the 2 freshman guards have really kind of caught up, and they're playing much more like veterans now, whereas the start of the year, they weren't. I think their upside lies in continuing to be sharper offensively, continuing to take care of the basketball the way they're taking care of the basketball, continuing to not only be a really good defensive team, but rebounding on the defensive end. I think Purdue, as I've said all year, doesn't have natural advantages as a defensive rebounding team anymore. And I think they kind of have to overachieve in that sense. And I think you can never overachieve enough in that regard. That comes with effort. That comes with physicality. And that's not naturally Purdue's inherent strength on this team. They just have to keep plugging, keep going, keep working at it. And I think the better and more consistent they get at that, the better they're going to be in the long run. So I think that's a few of the areas. Free throws. I don't think anybody is trying to miss free throws. I don't think Purdue's necessarily a deficient free throw shooting team, but there are games where you miss 7 of them, and eventually a miss 1-and-1 here, a miss 1-and-1 there, a split pair here, a split pair there. That stuff starts to add up, and that stuff can cost you a game at some point. And it's not like you're just going to improve as a foul shooting team like overnight in the middle of the season.
Right.
But that's one other thing where Purdue could be a little bit more consistent.
Yeah. It's a team that defensively, and you've written about this extensively, is really ramped up. Braden Smith seems to have taken it to a new level. Is that a key in terms? I mean, it's stating the obvious. It is a key to making this team as good as it can be. But that ramp up in defense, and you've talked about that on the site today in a story. But talk about what that means and how that's come about.
Well, I think they've got a system they've tweaked to best use the personnel they have, which is to say not having Zach Edey anymore.
Yeah.
And I think it took some time for all of these guys to kind of get their feet under them in that system and in their roles and in their responsibilities. And it's not like wholesale change. It's not like Purdue went from playing man-to-man to playing, zone, whatever, full court press, whatever, something starkly different. It's just they have tweaked some very minor things. And I shouldn't say very minor. I think there have been some pretty significant changes to what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they have taken to it really well here these last couple of weeks. The 8-game winning streak, or whatever the winning streak was, 7 games. I guess 8 if you count Toledo.
Yeah.
I'm counting Big Ten winning streak, not just winning streak, period. I think Purdue's been winning with defense. I think, there's still a really good offensive team. That's been their identity for the better part of a decade. They've been one of the best offensive programs in college basketball, but I think what they've done defensively has been one of the most stark in-season kind of transformations I've seen in however many years I've been doing this. And, the players deserve a lot of credit. The coaches deserve a lot of credit for implementing effective and pointed changes that have really made up for some things this team doesn't have. They don't have a shot blocker.
Yeah.
I have just as good a chance as anybody to lead Purdue in block shots this year.
Yeah.
They just do not have a shot blocker. That went out the window in game 2 when Daniel Jacobson got hurt. But I think that this has been a total team deal. There is, you remember San Diego, even before that.
Yeah.
Matt Painter was frequently lamenting his team's room to improve communicating on defense. I think there's probably still some upside there in terms of them getting on the same page more and more, but they look like they're playing as connected as they ever have. And I think the results kind of speak for themselves. Purdue's holding everybody under 70 except for Ohio State, which was circumstantial, 100% circumstantial. And they're forcing turnovers left and right, this is not a turnover defense.
Right.
This has not been a high-pressure defense since the mid-2000s. Now it's not a high-pressure defense either, but it's playing so well together that it's forcing people into mistakes. It's forcing undisciplined offenses into mistakes. And it just so happens Purdue's played a bunch of undisciplined offenses that haven't been able to make the right pass, to make the right second pass, to understand the big picture of what you have to do in terms of moving the ball to beat what Purdue's doing defensively. You saw Oregon just, let's move the ball around until we can drive into traffic and turn the ball over. That's basically, but that's a compliment to Purdue. That's Purdue laying traps for people who aren't astute enough or savvy enough to beat it. And Purdue's outsmarting people on defense as much as they're outplaying people on defense.
Yeah, and a key factor in where Purdue's high end can go. I want to thank Acre Pro, Kyle Spray, the good folks here for an early version of Wednesday Night Live, and we'll obviously be replaying that on the site tonight as well. When you need to do a 1031 exchange or deal with farmland real estate, talk to Kyle Spray and the good folks at Acre Pro. They've been awfully good to us here over the last few years as a sponsor, and they will answer your questions. I know Brian and I are not in the market for farmland, at least as far as we know, but we
speak for yourself.
Okay, maybe you are. Maybe that 1031 exchange is coming down the pike for you.
I'm an aspiring soybean enthusiast.
There you go. And there's a lot of that around Purdue World, even though the soybean fields, now they're not covered with snow right now. It is starting to melt a little bit around Lafayette. Okay, you and I both had what's that?
They're covered in geese.
Yes, they are covered in geese. You and I had the chance last night, Tuesday night, to go to Frank Kendrick's celebration of life. And I think there's still, and we're going to do a little something on this after the fact too, just because Christoph Kendrick had sent there's obviously a live stream that you can watch that too, but just your impressions. I thought one of the best moments of it was Trey Kaufman-Wren obviously the Kendrick family was Mimi and Christoph gave, and Frank's wife Miko gave impassioned and well delivered talks. But Trey Kaufman-Renn to me really came in, kind of wasn't on the plan, but came up and talked last night. But what were your impressions as you sat there at the pavilion last night?
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously a guy who touched a lot of lives, who, as I've said before, made everybody he talked to feel important, like they were the most important person, not just in the room, but in the world. I mean, he had this special knack for making you feel important. And one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. He had just an absolute gift for saying the funniest thing possible in the funniest way possible at the funniest time possible. I didn't know Frank all that well, but my limited interactions with him over the years, never walked away not, chuckling or smiling or laughing or some such thing. Hopefully he wasn't laughing at me, but he might have been. I don't know. But he was hilarious. And that's, I think, what a lot of people in that room are going to remember, that there was a lot of loyalty to former teammates and stuff like that. But he helped raise some good kids. That's pretty clear.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the ultimate compliment, what you leave behind you when you go, and how you're remembered, how you're thought of, the stories people tell about you, stuff like that. That's the kind of ultimate compliment. I thought it was very Trey Kaufman-Renn like in terms of his ability to just go up there and talk intelligently, and thoughtfully and from his heart. And he's a very unique college basketball player. Someday I will write the story I've been working on about that for like 8 months.
Yeah.
That I just have never gotten to, but he's a different bird, man. And he's the right kind of bird. I mean, he's gonna make it in this world. He's a very, very, very caring, very thoughtful, very intelligent person, but he's also a pretty vicious competitor. I've got some anecdotes from him over the years where I'll get into that story one day if I ever get around to writing it, which I promise I will. He's a pretty impressive guy, and I know he got pretty tight with Frank when he was playing for Indiana Elite, and Frank was helping out with their program. Christoph is one of Indiana Elite's guys, and I think Frank really helped Purdue with Trey Kaufman-Renn. I think having a friendly, smiling face that was pro Purdue around him, the kid chose Purdue for a lot of good reasons, a lot of the right reasons, some of us might say. But having Frank around, I'm sure helped, and that's what I think it bears mentioning about Frank too, how much he loved Purdue. At times too, when Purdue wasn't necessarily loving him back.
That's right.
And I think that that got weird there for a while, and it was just such a neat human story to see how the whole thing came full circle. And when he left this world, he was black and gold through and through, and just loved this place, and this place loved him.
Yeah, I think one thing that was interesting too, and poignant in some ways, Gene, Katie, and Frank. When Frank left the program as an assistant coach, that wasn't an easy situation for either one of them. The fact that Gene was front and center last night as well, that to me, and who the guy really and it's orchestrated. This is Matt Painter. You have to give Matt credit because. They made a conscious decision to get Frank back in the fold as much as possible. And maybe it was a good business decision too. I mean, obviously Frank has had tremendous contacts, not only in central Indiana, but in the basketball world. But that I think is, you have to credit Matt Painter, who obviously was also there last night, did not have a speaking role, but that was a behind the scenes thing that Matt really, I think, helped make sure that this was, and it was part of the deal. I mean, it came about organically, and it's really been to Purdue's benefit to kind of bring that circle together again. And they talked a lot about basketball family last night. And I think it's you don't want to. We're not cheerleading here, but we are saying in reality there's a lot of that that's very, very present in the Purdue basketball organization.
Yeah, no, it's real, and I mean, I'm not saying that to parakeet a Purdue trope. I think it really is real. You see, like I was on the floor after the Tennessee game in Detroit, and you just see the tangible connection between all of these people and their shared experiences, the emotions that came out in that moment, and it just hits you over the head. It's like, this isn't just, a college basketball program. This is something bigger than that. They do make efforts to keep people in the fold, even if they're not necessarily interested inherently in being in the fold. And it's a pretty neat thing they've got going here. But it was really something I'll remember when Frank first came back for those alumni games, and he was the 60-something-year-old guy out there running up and down the floor with much younger people, and just the joy he exuded, just being there and hearing his name announced and being around all those former Purdue people was just really touching. I'm not really a human being when it comes to emotions, but it was pretty cool to see that. And that's what it's all about, man. It's all about relationships. All we got's one another here. It's about how we improve other people's experiences and how other people improve our experiences. And, it's been a really neat thing for him to see how he's going to end up being remembered in the pantheon of, former Purdue players, people, and personalities. I mean, he has a huge personality. Yeah. I don't know anybody who didn't love the guy. You see his former players talking about it. You see Brandon Brantley up there.
Yeah, I thought Brandon was great last night too. Yeah, go ahead.
That's it.
Yeah, no, I just think that's true. And if it wasn't emotional, there were a lot of funny anecdotes and positive things, obviously, that came out of last night as well. But Brandon Brantley. Talking about the other side of Frank, not the other bad side, but the coach side, and the fact that I love the story about Brantley and his 42 earring. And what Frank, Frank went old school on him, and basically, I don't know, you can tell the story, but what Brandon said last night was funny about Frank got on him about that earring that Brandon brought in the mid-90s at Purdue.
And Frank, as Brandon told it, chased him around the office trying to get it out of his ear or some such thing. But no, Frank was really funny. I mean, his sense of humor was impeccable. His timing was impeccable. I've stolen some things from him over the years in terms of you shake somebody's hand. You got something funny to say. You shake somebody's hand. You hold the hand for an extra second. You give them a look in the eye. You kind of give them kind of a little bit of a half wink, and then you say it. Yeah. And it just destroys people. And he was really good with that kind of stuff. And that's why people were so damn drawn to him. Yeah. It was the smile. It was the humor. It was the knowing everybody's name. It was the always having a hand out and shake. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty special gift. It's not something we all have.
No, and it's funny. He is a walking example of the old Dale Carnegie, how to win friends and influence people. He could just do that like nobody's business. And I thought that he brought the table. You're right about him playing. This, and I had to go back and look at and I pulled some pictures of Chad Crockover's images from the 2023 reunion. And Kendrick scored. I think they might have set it up, but Frank would have been 72 in that game. Scores the first basket of the game, and of course he jacked up a few other shots, as Frank was known to do. But he was still capable of running up and down the court, like you said, at that time. So again, a very special evening for Purdue basketball and really for Purdue fans, because he is the epitome of optimism. Was the epitome of optimism. His family, I think Christoph too, his son, who certainly has a basketball life not only as a college basketball player, but and all that he's done in being around kids. Frank would be proud of where way Kristoff has emerged as well in the basketball world.
Yeah, don't tell Kristoff I said this, but he's
Okay.
got all the best of his dad. He's sharp as hell. He's got a great personality. He's a magnetic guy, and he's done well for himself in basketball, and he'll keep doing well for himself in basketball. Good guy for people's kids to be around.
It's funny.
Role model.
Yeah, no doubt. And his daughter Mimi, who is a judge now in Indianapolis, and she gives me some in these challenging times some hope that we'll have a judiciary that's strong, educated, and she was also her poem that she wrote, which was a long one, last night, was just stunningly good and poignant, to say the least.
Yeah, all right, I want to have a whole room hanging on your words.
I mean, absolutely, that was
incredible.
Every word, and you'll have to go back and watch the tape. I don't know. We could probably repeat it because this is the internet. But his thing, I love the line about Frank and September 11th. Of course, that was Frank's birthday, date of birth. And let's just say that Frank.
Go ahead and say it.
He said he wasn't going to let the terrorists, and I won't use the word, but he wasn't going to let them F with his birthday, I believe was the term.
Yeah,
and
it was just profanity. It wasn't anything worse than.
No. And exactly.
Yeah, don't make it sound funny. Like it was.
She wrote it as well as it could be written. All right, we have a couple more minutes here. I want to ask you about as we go on to another topic here. One other question that came across, which is open. This is not. I want to ask about the Big Ten race, but we had lunch, a little staff lunch today at our sponsor Ripple and Company, but had discussion that would have made for a good podcast as well. But Matt Painter in the world today, the world of revenue share that's coming in college sports. You've been around him. You've talked many times, written many times, without being, again, just being honest that this is a guy that if you get the chance to cover him, he's pretty dang good, pretty great to cover, and a great guy to be around. But does this environment keep Matt Painter coaching for a long time, or where do you see Matt Painter's career going? I think he's a whopping 54 years old now. He's going to set all kinds of records. Who knows? By the time he's done, if he coaches long enough, he may set the Big Ten record by the time he's done in terms of victories. But how do you see that playing out long term?
Well, I don't know how long he's going to coach. I don't think he knows how long he's going to coach. I just hope I'm around long enough to see the end. But I think that it could go a lot of different ways. I don't think the climate is going to. I don't think the lay of the land now in college basketball is going to chase him out, because he's acclimated to it unlike anybody. I mean, he's an old school coach, but when all this stuff changed, he was ahead of everything.
Yeah,
and Purdue's best years, maybe not only just under Matt Painter, but best years period, probably in program history. I can't speak to the 40s, 50s, and 30s like you can, but the best years I've seen have all come while all this was going on, all this transfer hysteria, all this NIL hysteria. Make no mistake, too, before all this stuff came down, people were NILing before NIL.
Yeah.
He was fans always held him to the standard of people who were cheating. That's not me parakeeting what he would say. He doesn't really talk about that stuff very often, but that was real. Coming from the guy who covers recruiting, with a rubber glove.
Yeah.
With a rubber glove. I know that they were keeping score on Matt Painter in a sport he wasn't even playing. In that regard. And once things changed to where things theoretically could have gone the other way on Purdue, they all turned toward Purdue, because Painter is so malleable as a coach. He can figure things out. He can win different ways. He can find his types of guys who aren't going to, necessarily be vulnerable to the portal and NIL stuff. And that's a very unique skill. And as things change, there's not a lot of reason to think that Painter can't keep changing with it. I mean, he's he came to Purdue as a grab and scratch defensive guy when the rules of the game allowed for that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right now, he is one of the premier offensive coaches in college basketball. He has changed with everything that has come, whether it's his teams, whether it's the rules, whether it's the state of basketball, the obsession with the three-pointer, things like that. And he's just done everything on his terms, and everything has been a success. And I don't see why he can't go on doing that indefinitely. The thing for me with him is that he really enjoys his life too, outside of basketball. If you've ever heard him talking about the Chicago Cubs or smoking meat on his gigantic smoker, you understand that this is a guy who is not what he was back in the 2000s when, he wanted to work 15-hour days because basketball coaching was his life. Now he's got his basketball coaching life and he's got his life. And that's the sort of thing that if he's going to retire as a relatively young man, I don't see him coaching till he's like 90.
Yeah.
But I don't see him retiring anytime soon either. I don't see him ever leaving for another job. I could be very wrong about that, but I really doubt it. I could see him, getting involved in, college basketball, USA basketball, whatever it might be at some higher level, whether that be a full-time deal or not, I don't know. But he's always going to be a guy who's giving back to the game for as long as he can. But I don't know if I necessarily see that manifesting itself in a full-time job. I think that he'd be an unbelievable czar for college basketball. I think Dan Gavitt has it now. How long into the future, that kind of thing. And I'm not starting rumors here. I'm just saying.
No, I get it. Yeah.
That's the sort of thing he'd be perfect for. But I just don't see him retiring anytime soon. But I don't want to rule it out either. He's 54 now. If we're talking about when is he going to retire, we're talking 10 years from now being early. Whether he'd coach for 20 more years, that's what I kind of question. But I don't know. He does have a life outside basketball, and he does like to have fun. And I don't know if he necessarily is going to, run to retirement, but I do suspect he's not going to be forced into it like some of these other guys who have decried all the new rules that they've benefited from as well, and then whined when it didn't work in their favor and just took their ball and went home. Like Jim Larinaga went to a Final Four because of his boosters buying him a team. Yeah. And then all of a sudden he's crying about NIL. That's just unbelievable disingenuousness. Tony Bennett, he's a stand-up guy, obviously. Everybody respects Tony Bennett, but for him to walk out on his team right before the season,
hard to do
because of things that were in place for months. He could have done this whenever. That I don't think, not that my opinion matters. That doesn't sit right with me. That wouldn't sit right with me if I were one of his players. That's not going to happen to Matt Painter. He's never just going to say, I can't deal with this stuff, because he's dealt with it, and he's dealt with it masterfully. He figured out NIL in a way that has really worked. He's made sure everyone's taken care of. It's not a everybody gets a different number, and that's a locker room issue. You reward people for staying in your program, things like that. And then on top of that, you can actually participate in the legitimate part of NIL and do really well, like Zach Edey did, like Braden Smith's doing right now. I'm sure Fletcher Lawyer, Lance Jones, guys like that have done pretty well for themselves. And that's just the way he's kind of gamed the system to fit his very unique kind of way of doing things that not every coach can replicate.
Yeah, man, he's done it well. All right, last comment I want to hear from you, and there should be a question mark at the end of this banner, but who is the favorite? Obviously, Michigan State remains undefeated. They beat Minnesota Tuesday night easily, but their schedule changes too. They got to go out, I believe, to the West Coast and play. Is Purdue in this race to the last weekend, weekend of the season, do you think? And of course, Purdue ends its late in the season with Michigan State and Illinois on the road. But what do you think?
I'm still calling Purdue the favorite until we see Michigan State play somebody. Purdue has played 2 fewer games in Michigan State, or 2 more games in Michigan State.
2 more games, yeah.
Michigan State, Purdue got its schedule bottleneck early. Purdue got completely screwed by the Big Ten and TV on that quick turnaround after the West Coast. Michigan State won't have as much of that when all their tough games come all in succession. But that will be a tough run for Michigan State starting February 1st out in LA, and then all the games that follow that. Results thus far this season tell us that the West Coast trip is good for at least 1 loss. Michigan, 2 games after coming back from LA, lost at Minnesota. Illinois, 2 games after coming back from the Pacific Northwest, lost at home to USC. USC's playing better, so that's not the horrible loss now than it was back then. But I think you can put Michigan State down for at least 1 loss during this stretch. You might be able to put them down for more than 1 loss. Purdue's got its crack at them in East Lansing. That'll come relatively close to their trip out west. And Purdue stacked up pretty well with Michigan State here the last few years. They've stacked up pretty well in East Lansing even. So Purdue might get that game, and that then is a second loss. I just think Purdue's in a good spot here, and I just think Michigan State is got its toughest tests ahead. So it being undefeated right now is a little bit cosmetic. I'm sure you could have said the same about Purdue leading into that Michigan game or leading out to its Western trip. But I think that I think Purdue's set up pretty well here. I think Michigan's going to drop out of this thing. I think they're set up to lose some games. I think that Illinois is out already with the number of losses they've already taken. Right. Indiana was never in it. Who else are we talking about here? Wisconsin's got a bunch of losses already. Who else is there?
Yeah, I mean, you got Michigan State, Purdue.
UCLA's out already.
They're at least as it sits right now, unless it gets
Oregon's
down to
lost way too many games.
Yeah, and they lost at Minnesota. Of course, so did Michigan. You're right. You get down to 6. Is it going to be a 5 or 6 loss champion? I don't think so.
It might be.
But it may. And Purdue's sitting at 2 right now, and Michigan State at 0. And I think Illinois already has 4, so it's going to be interesting to see.
The team that's playing really well right now, but I think they've already taken too many losses is Maryland.
Maryland's really good, and we saw how good they were in December here. I thought they came.
They were very good.
Yeah,
the game they won at Illinois. I know Illinois didn't have its center, and that was a big deal in that game. But
sure, without Queen,
I don't think it was a 25-point difference. Them winning at Indiana the other day showed a lot of toughness, a lot of competitiveness and things like that. That went right down to the last second, and everything was going the home team's way there for a while, and Maryland just stole it right back at the end. And I think that showed something. And maybe Kevin Willard can coach. I've had my doubts, but that they've been playing pretty well lately. It doesn't hurt having Derek Queen.
He's really good.
It doesn't hurt having Julian Reese as like a 24-year-old too, but they're playing well.
Yeah. Okay. Just to make sure we're giving you the right information. Yes. You've got 2 losses in the Big Ten with Michigan, Purdue, Wisconsin, Maryland with 4 at this point. Of course, Michigan State at none. And you are right. Purdue's got a little bit of an advantage from the standpoint of having played some more 10 conference games. Of course, Michigan State now played its 9th last night, but it is going to be interesting to see how that plays out. All right, Brian, thank you for putting off with our technical difficulties in the front end. Thanks for doing this an early version of Wednesday Night Live and dealing with a little bit of romper room in the background at McDonald's, or is that where you are?
Yes.
Okay.
So I just had to run to the first place where I could get a table and Wi-Fi that I could find after you cracked the whip on us and made us go eat lunch with you just to placate your own little ego.
Yeah, I know. That's all right. I
enjoy. I had to run over here, so I sit here in a public space, stewing at people for using a public space. That's just how selfish I am. So.
No, that's all right, and we appreciate your. I don't know if intestinal fortitude is the right word, but it's a level of fortitude. But we are grateful for that. So thank you also to Kyle Spray and the good folks at acrepro.com. When it comes to land sales, it pays to have experts in your corner. Acre Pro Midwest Farm Group are your local farmland specialists. Visit acrepro.com or call 765-6502. Brian and I will do this a couple more times during basketball. I think we need to do a late night version. You're a late night guy. We should probably do an 11 o'clock version sometime and do a Jimmy Kimmel version. We can compete against him as well. But there'll be a lot more to be talking about, not only on goldenblack.com. You can subscribe. You can give gift subscriptions. Also, 40% off if you'd like to do that. Make sure you check out our website. Brian does a terrific job of telling you everything you need to know about Purdue basketball. Tom Dienhart, Mike Carmen, Tom Dienhart trying to deal with National Signing Day this week, which I don't know if it'll be much of an event, but there's a lot going on in the portal and new players for Coach Barry Odom and company. Mike Carmen, like I said, we appreciate what he brings to the table too. So have a great rest of your Wednesday. Whenever you watch this, if you were watching this live, which many of you did, we're thankful for you doing that. And we will have the replay will be up as well. So have a great rest of the Wednesday.
Do some work.
Yeah, yeah. We're robbing work again. So have a great rest of your Wednesday. Thanks again. And we'll be back. We'll give you plenty of warning when we do our next Wednesday Night Live, brought to you by acrepro.com. Take care, all.